In 1943, something unusual happened to a woman named Marianne Elise Kürchner, a young woman of Czech origin who had recently been widowed. Her husband had gone to war and died on the battlefield. Now that she was alone, Marianne had to find a job to earn a living. She found a job in an arms factory, and for a while things seemed to be back to normal. However, one day she was surprised by agents of the Gestapo, Germany's secret police, who arrested her on the spot. When she was told the reasons why she was being taken into custody, she couldn't believe it. Her crime had been telling a joke to her co-workers, a joke that exhausted the patience of the Nazi hierarchs and led to her arrest. Today, in this new episode of Military History, we'll tell you all about the joke that angered Adolf Hitler. Are you ready? Let's get started. To understand this story, we first have to pay attention to the historical context of Germany. By 1943, the Third Reich had been mired in war for almost 5 years, and the morale of its inhabitants was on the ground. Hitler's main partner in Europe, Benito Mussolini, was busy fighting the Allied invasion in Italy. Meanwhile, in North Africa, things were not looking any better for the fascist forces, as the German Afrika Korps troops had withdrawn to safer ground. As if that weren't enough, Wehrmacht soldiers were wandering around the Soviet Union frozen and being riddled with Russian snipers. Tempers in Germany were running high, more and more people were convinced that defeat was near, and not even Joseph Goebbels' powerful propaganda could convince them otherwise. For this reason, Hitler ordered the creation of a law to punish all those who questioned the victory of Germany. The regulations stated the following: the death penalty will be applied in case of demoralization of the defensive forces to those who incite to evade service in the army. The same will be done with anyone who publicly tries to paralyze or undermine the will of the German people or one of its allies. The aim of the legislation was to persecute internal enemies, particularly those who dared to criticize the Führer and his way of conducting the war. The law was drafted in a deliberately ambiguous way, so that judges could interpret it at their discretion. Thus, a harmless comment made between friends or relatives could be a crime, and the culprit could receive anything from a warning to a death sentence, in the most extreme cases. Jokes were particularly affected by the new legislation, although that was not really new. Starting in 1933, Hitler took it upon himself to censor humor and harass all those who dared to make fun of him. The Nazis enacted laws prohibiting humorous comments towards their leader, but the penalties at first were not severe, the most serious being a fine. Therefore, for many years jokes that made fun of the dictator abounded, which were told with laughter by thousands of Germans who did not take Nazism seriously. One of them said the following: one day, Hitler visits a mental hospital and the patients submissively give the fascist salute with outstretched arms. Suddenly, the dictator discovers a man who does not. "Why don't you salute like the others?" he asks. And the man answers, "My Führer, it's because I'm the nurse, I'm not crazy." Over time, these kinds of comments were dubbed safe jokes because, if said in public, they would lead you safely to the concentration camp. As the Third Reich hardened its anti-Semitic policies, there was a revival of black humor, which became very popular in the Jewish community, the one most affected by the Nazi government. The jokes were a way of resisting and enduring an increasingly tragic situation. One of the most popular jokes of the moment ran as follows: 2 Jews are about to be shot. Suddenly the order changes and they are sentenced to death by hanging. One says to the other, "See, they're running out of bullets." From 1943, making fun of the Nazi hierarchs became something extremely dangerous. If the comment was overheard by an adherent of Nazism, he would report it to the Gestapo, whose agents would take the person responsible to jail. As we told you at the beginning of the video, this is what happened to Marianne Elise Kürchner, a Czech who lived in the German capital and worked as a technical draftsman in a weapons factory. One day, she made the mistake of telling a joke involving the Führer and Hermann Göring, the commander of the German Air Force. The comment read like this: one day, Hitler and Göring are in the broadcasting tower in Berlin. Suddenly, Hitler announces that he wants to make the Berliners happy, to which Göring replies, "Then jump from the tower." Little did Marianne know that among all the people who heard her joke, one of them was an admiring fan of Nazism. The man reported what had happened to the Gestapo, who proceeded to arrest the person responsible on charges of defeatism and anti-patriotism. The case was left in the hands of the infamous People's Court, an audience that judged political crimes, such as mockery of the leaders of the Third Reich. The trial was a sham and Marianne had no chance to defend herself. Actually, the court had made the decision to punish her from the beginning, to use her as an example. On June 26, 1943, the judges handed down the following sentence: "Mrs. Marianne Kürchner, in her capacity as a war widow, has tried to undermine our solid defense morale and our efficient work for the sake of victory. For this, she used malevolent words against the Führer and the German people, thus expressing the wish that we lose the war. Because of this, and because she has behaved like a Czech, she has placed herself on the fringes of our patriotic community. She has lost her honor forever and therefore she is sentenced to death." It didn't matter that Marianne's husband had fought for the Third Reich. In fact, that only aggravated the situation, since, in the opinion of the court, the convicted woman had dishonored his memory. By laughing at those who were her leaders and her commanders on the battlefield, Marianne tarnished her late husband's war effort and all he had fought for. There was no escape from her anymore. The woman was sent to the guillotine, where they mercilessly cut off her head. In this way, Nazism claimed the life of another person, and the story of Marianne Kürchner came to an end. Humor remained strictly monitored and censored by the authorities until the end of World War II, in 1945. From that moment on, it seemed that the Germans were going to enjoy the right to express themselves freely. However, it should be noted that when the Soviet Union occupied German territory and established the socialist state of the German Democratic Republic, freedom of expression continued to be a dream. Whereas in earlier times its inhabitants could not laugh at the Führer and the top brass of the National Socialist Party, now they were forbidden to mock Stalin and the leaders of the Communist Party. Thus, in a sense, history seemed to repeat itself. We have reached the end of the video. Thank you very much for joining us. If you liked the content, don't forget to subscribe to our channel to learn about many more military events that left their mark on history.